My parents didn't come to my wedding day. I called them and asked where they were. They said, "Enjoy your wedding with a plumber." So I laughed and sent them a photo. Suddenly, they started calling me in a panic. My name is Luna, and I was my mother's first daughter. She had me while she was still trying to figure out her life. She married young, right after high school, to my father, Sebastian. They focused more on love than money, which didn't work well for long. I was still a child when she met Carlos, a man with a lot of money and a luxurious car. She left. My father took me with him and never looked back, except when it was time to collect child support. At first, Carlos seemed kind. He brought me gifts and let me play in his large office filled with shiny things. But my mother changed with him. She always looked at me as if I reminded her of a life she wanted to forget. One night, I overheard them talking in the kitchen while I was supposed to be watching TV. "She looks too much like Sebastian," my mother said sharply, always asking questions, always looking at me the way he used to. At that moment, I didn't understand what she meant, but it hurt to hear her talk about me as if I were a problem. Of course, I loved my real father. He lived in a small apartment on the other side of the city, but every moment with him was fun, even if we were just playing in the park or eating cheap pizza. My mother's words that night stayed with me, and over time she became more critical. "You can't do anything right," she would say whenever I tried to help around the house or do my homework in the living room. My father, on the other hand, was different. "You're doing great, Luna," he would tell me every time I showed him my grades or a drawing from school. "Don't let anyone tell you otherwise." Life at my mother's house with Carlos became more stressful when I started school. She always talked about appearances, about how I had to wear the right clothes and befriend the right boys. "Why don't you dress like Carla's daughter? Look at her," she would say, showing me a picture from a party I hadn't been invited to. One day, after she scolded me for tracking mud into the hallway, I finally answered back. "At least Dad doesn't yell over a little dirt." The slap was quick. Her hand burned against my cheek before I even realized she had moved. "Don't talk about your father like that," she hissed, her face close to mine, her breath smelling of coffee and anger. Tears welled up in my eyes, but I held them back just as my father had taught me. That night, lying in bed, I promised myself I wouldn't cry. I wouldn't give her that satisfaction. When my mother announced she was pregnant again, the whole house felt different, as if something big was about to change, and not in a good way. She had that glow people talk about when they're expecting, but it never seemed to shine toward me. "I'm going to have a baby with the man I love. It's going to be perfect," she said one afternoon, rubbing her belly while Carlos smiled like he had won a prize. Carlos, always charming, added, "We need to renovate the guest room to make it fit for a little princess." My heart sank. They were talking about my room, my little corner in their world. "What will happen to my room?" I asked, trying to keep my voice steady. My mother looked at me and her smile grew tense. "You can move into the small room, Luna. It's the right thing to do. The baby will need space." The way she said it made it clear the decision had already been made. There was no room for discussion. So I moved. I packed my things and settled into the smallest room in the house, barely bigger than a closet. Time flew by, and soon Maria was born. Everyone talked about her. "Isn't she the most beautiful baby you've ever seen?" My mother gushed over the phone to her friends, cradling Maria like she was the most precious thing in the world. "Yeah, she's adorable," I murmured, trying to join the conversation. Sweet little Maria was indeed lovable, and I couldn't help but love her from the moment I saw her. "I want you to be a good big sister and help out." One afternoon, I tried to sneak into Maria's room while my mother was busy in the kitchen. I tiptoed in, peeking over the crib at my little sister, who was gurgling happily. "Hello, Maria," I whispered, extending a finger for her to grab. But my mother must have heard me because suddenly she was standing at the door, her voice as sharp as a knife. "What are you doing, Luna? I told you to ask before entering her room." "I just wanted to see her," I protested, feeling the familiar burn of tears in my eyes. I only wanted to help, but things were different with Dad. During one of the weekends I spent with him, I told him sincerely, as we ate pizza at our favorite place, "Mom is always nervous when I'm around Maria. It's like she thinks I'm gonna break her or something." Dad thought for a moment before responding. "You know, Luna, some people have trouble sharing love. It's like they think there's only a limited amount for everyone. But remember, you have a big heart. Don't let your mother's behavior make you think otherwise." His words helped a little. But at Mom's house, the distance between us kept growing. Even when I tried to share stories about school or friends, her attention was always divided, half listening, half focused on Maria. One day, I came home with a school award, second place in the science fair. I was so excited, clutching the certificate as if it were a ticket to her approval. "Look, Mom, I won!" I exclaimed enthusiastically as she fed Maria. What a sweet little angel, she said without looking up. Put it on the fridge or something. Or something, I thought, feeling the emptiness of her words. I stuck the certificate to the fridge, slightly crooked, and stepped back toward them. It was nothing more than another piece of paper, another day in Maria's shadow. By the time I reached high school, things at home had gotten pretty bad. Between my mother's coldness and Carlos' indifference, I felt more like a guest than part of the family. That's when she dropped the bombshell. Mom decided it was time for me to live with Dad permanently. The day she told me we were having dinner, it was one of those rare moments when it was just the two of us at the table. Carlos was working late and Maria was already in bed. Luna, we need to talk about your future. Mom began pushing her food around her plate with her fork. There was no warmth in her voice, just a cold, serious tone that immediately made me nervous. What is this about? I asked, trying to sound indifferent, but my heart was pounding. We've been talking and we think it's best for you to move in with your father when the new baby arrives. Things here are, well, complicated, she said. I nearly choked on my water. I'm moving in with Dad? I thought everything was fine here, I replied. Mom sighed, a sound full of impatience. Look, Luna, you're not a child anymore. You need your own space and we can't give it to you here, not with this new situation. It's complicated and frankly, the financial burden is greater than we expected. This way, it's better for everyone. The taxi pulled up in front of the old building in the working-class neighborhood. I clutched my small suitcase to my chest, holding back the tears that threatened to spill. It was all I had managed to pack before Mom practically pushed me out of the house. Are you sure this is the place, miss? The taxi driver asked, glancing at the worn-down building with concern. Yes, I answered softly. My father lives here, I said as I climbed the worn stairs to the third floor. Each step echoed with my mother's last words. It's better for everyone. The building smelled like a mix of home-cooked food and dampness, so different from the artificial vanilla scent Carlos insisted on keeping in the house. Before I could knock on the door of apartment 3B, it swung open. Dad was there, still wearing his work overalls, his face filled with a mixture of worry and love. Luna, he whispered, and in that one word, there was more affection than I had heard in years of living with Mom and Carlos. I threw myself into his arms, finally letting the tears flow freely. He smelled like wood and coffee, the same comforting scent I remembered from Sunday mornings in my childhood. I'm sorry, I sobbed against his chest. I had nowhere else to go. You're home, princess, he said, his voice breaking with emotion. You've always had a home here. The apartment was small, much smaller than Carlos's mansion. A living dining area barely big enough for a worn-out couch and a wooden table, a tiny kitchen, and 2 narrow bedrooms. But there was something in the air, a warmth I had never felt in the big, empty house I had left behind. Your room is ready, Dad said, carrying my suitcase. It's not much, but it's perfect, I interrupted, looking around the small room he had prepared for me. A single bed with clean sheets, a simple desk, and a window overlooking the bustling street. On the wall, I found a surprise that made me cry again. He had hung up all the photos and drawings I had given him during our Sundays together. Are you hungry? He asked, scratching his head nervously. I could order a pizza. The word pizza brought back all the memories of our Sundays, sitting on the floor, eating cheap pizza, and laughing at silly shows on his old TV. I'd love that, I said, smiling through my tears. As we waited for the pizza, Dad watched me as if he was afraid I might disappear. Luna, he began cautiously, I know this isn't what you're used to. Stop, I interrupted. This feels more like home than that big house ever did. He sat next to me on the worn-out couch, and for the first time, I told him everything. How Mom always made me feel like I wasn't enough, how Maria's birth had marked the beginning of the end, how Carlos never saw me as part of his family. When Maria was born, I continued, my voice barely a whisper, I thought maybe I'd have a sister, someone who would love me. But Mom, she built a wall between us. I was just a reminder of the life she wanted to forget. Dad listened in silence, his eyes filled with deep sorrow, but also a fierce determination. Luna, he finally said, I'm sorry I didn't fight harder for you. I thought that staying with your mother would give you a better life, more opportunities. Better? I smiled bitterly. Dad, those Sundays with you were the only thing that kept me sane. Watching old movies, eating cold pizza, listening to you sing off-key while fixing something, those were the only moments I truly felt loved. The doorbell rang, interrupting our conversation. It was the pizza, and the familiar aroma filled the small apartment. Dad grabbed 2 chipped plates and 2 cans of soda from the fridge. "Do you remember when you were 7?" he asked as he sat beside me. "You were worried that we couldn't go to fancy restaurants like Carlos and your mother did." "Yeah," I nodded, already knowing what was coming. "Do you remember what I told you?" "That love tastes better than any expensive meal," I answered, feeling a fresh wave of tears. "Exactly," he smiled. "And look at you now, princess. You've grown into a strong, beautiful woman, despite everything." That night, sitting on the floor as we used to, eating pizza and watching an old movie on his outdated television, I felt something inside me begin to heal. The apartment might have been small, the furniture worn out, but there was more love in every square inch than in all of Carlos's mansion. The next few days were an adjustment. I woke up to the sounds of the city, so different from the artificial silence of the exclusive neighborhood I had lived in. Dad left for work early, but always made sure to leave coffee and a note on the table. "Good morning, princess. Have a wonderful day." One morning, as I cleaned my little room, I found a box that Dad had kept for years. Inside were my childhood drawings, handmade Father's Day cards, even the first tooth I had lost. Every memory carefully preserved, every moment treasured. "They're my treasures," Dad said when he found me crying over the box. "Every Sunday you spent with me was like Christmas, and I kept everything you gave me as if it were gold." That was when I truly understood. Real wealth wasn't in the material things Mom and Carlos valued so much. It was in these moments, in unconditional love, in the ability to make someone feel special without spending a fortune. One afternoon, as I helped Dad fix the kitchen faucet, he told me something I had never known. "Do you know why I chose this apartment?" he asked, handing me a wrench. I shook my head. "Because from here I could see your school. Every morning before heading to work, I would stand at that window waiting to see you arrive. I couldn't be with you all the time, but at least I could watch over you from afar." I was speechless, picturing my father standing at that window, day after day, year after year, watching over me in silence, respecting the boundaries Mom had set, but never stopping his quiet care. "Why didn't you ever tell me?" I asked. "Because I didn't want you to feel torn between us," he replied simply. Living between two worlds had already been difficult enough. Days turned into weeks, and little by little, the small apartment truly became my home. I learned how to make coffee with the old coffee maker, how to fix simple things with Dad's tools, how to find beauty in imperfection. My phone would ring occasionally with calls from Mom, but they were brief and cold. "Are you okay?" she would ask mechanically. "Do you need anything?" "I'm better than ever," I would reply sincerely, and it was true. Every day, I discovered something new about myself, about life, about what truly mattered. Maria sent me a few messages in secret. "I miss you," she wrote. "The house feels empty without you." I wanted to tell her to come visit me, to see this side of life that Mom so deeply despised, but I knew it wasn't the right time yet. One night, as we ate homemade soup at the small kitchen table, Dad surprised me with a question. "Are you happy here, Luna? I know it's not what you're used to." I looked at him, really looked at him. I saw the wrinkles around his eyes, marks of years of hard work and worry. I saw the paint stains on his hands, the worn-out overalls, the hair beginning to gray, and I saw all the love in the world in his gaze. "Dad," I said, taking his calloused hand, "for the first time in my life, I know exactly where I belong." "You can't keep living like this, Luna," Dad told me one morning as I curled up on the couch, absent-mindedly flipping through an old book. It had been a month since I arrived, and though the initial pain had faded, I still felt lost. "Like what?" I asked, though I knew exactly what he meant. "Hiding from the world," he said, sitting beside me. "I know it's hard, Princess, but you need to build your own life." He was right, of course. I had dropped out of the private university Mom had enrolled me in, and I spent my days wandering around the small apartment, trying not to think about the future. "We don't have the money for the university Mom was paying for," I murmured, shame creeping into my voice. "No," Dad smiled. "But we have something better. Determination. There's an excellent public university just a few blocks from here, and I know a restaurant that's looking for waitresses." I sat up surprised. "You want me to be a waitress?" "I want you to learn the value of honest work," he said firmly. "To understand that there's nothing shameful about earning your own money, no matter how you do it." The next day, I found myself standing in front of El Rincón de Ana, a small but cozy restaurant in the heart of the neighborhood. Ana, the owner, was a robust woman with a warm smile and sharp eyes. "Your father is a good man," she said as she showed me how to use the industrial coffee machine. "He's fixed every appliance in this place for years, never charges me what he should." The first few weeks were exhausting. My feet ached, my hands grew rough from constant work, and more than once, I spilled coffee all over my apron. But there was something freeing about earning my own money, knowing that every peso was a product of my effort. At night, after my shift, I would sit at the small kitchen table to study. I had enrolled in the public university to continue my business administration studies. It was different from my old university. Classrooms were fuller, books more worn, but there was an energy, a passion for learning that I had never experienced before. "You know what the most valuable thing we have is?" Dad asked me one evening while helping me review for an exam. "Dignity," he answered before I could respond. "No one can take it from you unless you let them." His words resonated deeply. I thought about all the times I had felt less than in Mom and Carlo's house, how I had let their wealth and social status define my worth. At the restaurant, I met people who taught me more about life than all my years in Mom's privileged world. There was Rosa, the cook, who raised 3 children on her own but never lost her smile, and Jorge, the dishwasher, who studied medicine in his free time, chasing his dream against all odds. One afternoon, as I wiped down tables, I overheard 2 regular customers whispering, "Isn't that Carlos Montero's daughter, the one who used to live on the hill?" Their voices were filled with pity and morbid curiosity. At another time, I might have hidden in the kitchen, ashamed, but that day, I lifted my head and kept working with a smile. I was no longer Carlos Montero's daughter. I was Luna. Just Luna. And I was proud of who I was becoming. On weekends, when I wasn't working, I helped Dad with his maintenance jobs. He taught me how to use tools, how to identify basic electrical problems, how to take pride in a job well done. "Every little thing we fix," he would say while showing me how to change an outlet, "is a small victory. We're not just repairing objects, we're helping people." Maria still sent me messages from time to time. One day she wrote something that made me think. "Mom says you're wasting your life, but I've never seen you smile so much in the pictures you post." And it was true. The photos I shared now weren't from fancy restaurants or social events. They were simple moments, helping in the restaurant's kitchen, studying with my new university classmates, laughing with Dad while we tried to fix a stubborn appliance. One night, after an especially long shift, I came home to find Dad asleep on the couch, surrounded by bills and receipts. I stopped and looked at him. His calloused hands, his worn but clean clothes, the wrinkles on his forehead that spoke of years of worry. I gently covered him with a blanket, noticing for the first time the gray hairs appearing at his temples. This man, whom some would consider simple or unsuccessful, had taught me more about life and love in a few months than I had learned in a lifetime of keeping up appearances. "Luna," he murmured, waking up, "how was your day?" "It was good, Dad," I smiled, sitting next to him. "I got a 10 on my accounting exam." His eyes lit up with pride. "That's my girl. I always knew you were brilliant." "Dad," I hesitated for a moment. "Thank you for everything, for showing me that there are other ways to live, to be happy." He hugged me tightly, and in that embrace I felt all the love that Mom had never known how to give me. "No, princess," he said softly. "Thank you for being so brave." Months passed, and little by little, I built a new life. A life without luxury, but rich in experiences and lessons. My bank account was modest, but my heart was full. One day, while serving coffee in the restaurant, I heard a strange noise coming from the kitchen. The sink had started leaking furiously, threatening to flood the entire place. "Luna," Anna called out, worried, "is your father available? We need a plumber urgently." "He's out of town," I replied, remembering he had gone to a job outside the city, "but I can call someone else." "He'll be here in 15 minutes, I announced after hanging up. Anna nodded, watching the water begin to pool on the kitchen floor. The plumber arrived sooner than expected. He was young, maybe a couple of years older than me, dressed in a worn but clean blue uniform. His warm brown eyes had a kindness that instantly reminded me of Dad. "I'm Diego," he introduced himself with a shy smile. "Where's the problem?" I led him to the kitchen, watching as he assessed the situation with expert eyes. He knelt by the sink, pulling tools from his box with precise, confident movements. "Would you mind helping me?" he asked, surprising me. "I need you to hold the flashlight while I work." I knelt beside him, holding the flashlight as he instructed. As he worked, he explained each step with patience, just like Dad did with me. "See this joint? It's worn out. That's why the water is leaking. Most people think they need to replace the whole system, but sometimes it's just one small piece causing the problem." There was something fascinating about the way his hands moved, about how he treated each tool with respect. Not so different from Dad, I thought, realizing there was beauty in fixing what others considered disposable. "Have you worked here long?" he asked while tightening a pipe. 6 months, I replied. I study business administration at the public university. Really? He smiled. I study engineering at night. This job helps me pay for classes. The repair took about an hour. When he finished, the sink worked perfectly. Diego washed his hands and began writing up the invoice. It's less than I expected, Anna remarked, surprised at the amount on the bill. I only replaced what was necessary, Diego explained. I don't like charging for things people don't actually need. As he packed up his tools, I noticed a calculus book peeking out of his work bag, the same one I used at university. You go to the National University too? I asked, pointing at the book. His eyes lit up. Yeah, 3rd year of engineering. You? 2nd year of business administration, I replied, though I've never seen you on campus. Well, he smiled, maybe we should grab a coffee sometime, to talk about calculus and broken pipes. I laughed, feeling a familiar warmth on my cheeks. I'd like that. Coffee became a habit. We met at the small university cafe between classes. Diego always showed up in his work uniform, sometimes with grease stains on his hands that he hurriedly tried to wipe away. Don't be embarrassed, I told him one day, noticing how he tried to hide his stained hands. My dad is the same way. The best people I know have dirty hands from honest work. He looked at me with a mix of surprise and admiration. You're different, he finally said. Most girls don't date plumbers? I finished with an ironic smile. Well, I shrugged, most girls don't know what they're missing. Our relationship grew naturally, like a plant that blooms slowly but steadily. Diego would pick me up after my shifts at the restaurant, and we'd walk through the neighborhood talking about everything and nothing. He told me about his mother, who had raised 4 children on her own, and about his dream of one day having his own maintenance business. One Sunday, I invited him to our traditional pizza night with Dad. He was nervous, constantly adjusting the clean shirt he had put on for the occasion. Relax, I whispered as we climbed the stairs. Dad's going to like you. And he did. Dad and Diego connected instantly, talking about tools, repairs, and difficult clients. I watched them from the kitchen, my heart filled with quiet joy as I saw the 2 most important men in my life sharing laughter and experiences. He's a good guy, Dad said that night after Diego left. He's grounded, and his heart is in the right place. It was inevitable that Mom would find out about my relationship with Diego. Maria, in one of our message exchanges, mentioned that she had seen me with the plumber at university. The phone call didn't take long to come. Is it true? Mom's voice was a mix of horror and disbelief. Are you dating a plumber? Yes, Mom, I answered calmly. His name is Diego. He's studying engineering, and he's the most honest and hardworking person I know. Luna, for God's sake, she sighed dramatically. What will our friends say? Have you thought about your future? Yes, Mom, I've thought about it a lot, and my future is with someone who loves me for who I am, not for what I have or how I appear to be. The silence on the other end of the line was deafening. Finally, she spoke in a cold voice. You're making a mistake, just like I did with your father. No, Mom, I replied, feeling an overwhelming sense of peace. My only mistake was trying to be someone I wasn't to please you. Diego loves me for who I truly am, and I love him just as he is. Her words no longer had the power over me that they once did. Thanks to Dad, and now Diego, I had learned that a person's worth isn't measured by their bank account or social status. One night, as Diego walked me home after a simple dinner at a small neighborhood restaurant, he suddenly stopped. Luna, he said, his voice trembling slightly, I know I can't offer you luxuries or a life like the one you were used to, but… Diego, I interrupted. The life I was used to was a gilded cage. With you, for the first time, I feel truly free. His eyes shone with unspoken emotion. I love you, he said simply. With everything I am, with everything I have, which isn't much, he admitted. I smiled. It's everything I need, I replied, kissing him under the soft glow of the streetlight. That night, as I got ready for bed, I found a note Diego had slipped into my bag. Thank you for showing me that true love needs nothing more than 2 honest hearts. I placed it carefully alongside all the notes Dad left for me each morning. Simple treasures that were worth more than all the jewels I had once owned in Mom's house. The proposal came on an ordinary night, just like everything important in our relationship. Diego had come over for dinner, as he did every Thursday. Dad had made his famous stew, and the 3 of us sat around the small kitchen table sharing stories and laughter. Mr. Martinez, Diego said suddenly, his voice trembling slightly, I need to ask you something important. Dad set his spoon down and looked at Diego with a mix of curiosity and understanding. I held my breath, my heart pounding so loudly I was sure they could hear it. "Luna," Diego turned to me, pulling a small box from his pocket. It wasn't an expensive jewelry case, but a simple wooden box, one he had carved himself. "I know I can't offer you a costly ring or a life of luxury," he said, opening the box to reveal a simple yet beautiful ring. "But I can promise you honest love and hard work every day of my life." "This belonged to my grandmother," he continued. "It's the only thing of real value in my family passed down through generations." Tears streamed down my cheeks as he went on. "Would you do me the honor of sharing your life with me? Of building a home together, one built on true love?" I looked at Dad, whose eyes glistened with emotion. Then I looked at Diego, kneeling beside my chair, holding not just a ring, but a promise, a life of sincerity, of real love. "Yes," I answered, crying tears of joy. 1,000 times yes. Dad stood and embraced us both, his own tears mingling with ours. "Take care of her," he told Diego. "With my life," Diego promised, sliding the ring onto my finger. The days that followed were a whirlwind of emotions and planning. We decided on a simple wedding in the community garden of our building. Anna, my boss at the restaurant, offered to prepare the food, and my university friends promised to help with the decorations. "Are you going to invite your mother?" Dad asked one night as we went over the guest list. My heart tightened. Despite everything, part of me longed to have my mother and Maria at my wedding. "I should try, right?" Dad nodded understandingly. "It's your decision, princess. But remember, your happiness is what matters most." Taking a deep breath, I picked up my phone and dialed Mom's number. After several rings, she answered in her usual distant tone. "Luna, what a surprise!" "Mom," I began, my voice trembling slightly. "I'm getting married. I'd love for you and Maria to be there." The silence on the other end was deafening. Finally, she spoke in an icy tone. "To the plumber?" "To Diego," I corrected. "He's a wonderful man, Mom. If you got to know him..." "Do you have any idea what people will say?" she interrupted. "Have you thought about your future? About what kind of life a simple plumber can offer you?" Her words stung, but not the way they used to. "A life full of true love, Mom. A life where I don't have to pretend to be someone I'm not." "I can't support this," she declared. "I won't be a part of this madness, and Maria won't go either." Before I could respond, Maria took the phone. "Luna," she said excitedly. "It's true? You're getting married?" "Yes, Maria." I smiled through my tears at the sound of my sister's voice. "I'd love for you to be there." She hesitated, lowering her voice to a whisper. "Mom won't let me go, but I'll send you a gift. I promise." The call ended shortly after, leaving me with a mix of sadness and acceptance. Dad hugged me in silence, his presence more comforting than any words. "You don't need her approval," he finally said. "You have all the love you need right here." The preparations continued. Diego and I didn't want a lavish ceremony. The community garden would be transformed with simple lights and wildflowers. Anna prepared a modest but delicious menu, and the music would come from the street musicians who always played in the nearby plaza. One afternoon, as Diego and I painted the old chairs we'd use for the ceremony, he looked at me with concern. "Are you sure this is enough for you?" he asked. "You deserve so much more." I silenced him with a kiss. "This is more than I ever dreamed of, Diego. It's real. It's honest. It's us." The night before the wedding, as we finished the last details, I received a message from Maria. "Luna, I wish I could be there, but I want you to know that I admire you for being brave and following your heart. Someday, I hope to be as strong as you." Those words meant more than any expensive gift or social approval. My little sister had seen beyond appearances and understood what truly mattered. The morning of the wedding arrived with bright sunshine and a gentle breeze. My dress was simple, bought from a small downtown shop, but I felt more beautiful than ever. Dad cried when he saw me wearing it. "You look perfect," he said, adjusting the small bouquet of wildflowers in my hands. "Absolutely perfect." That was when I decided to make one last call. I dialed Mom's number, my heart beating with determination rather than fear. "Where are you?" I asked when she answered. "The ceremony is about to start." Her response was exactly what I expected. "Enjoy your wedding with a plumber." I laughed softly, surprising even myself. For the first time, her words had no power over me. I sent her a picture. Dad and Diego, arms around each other, their faces radiant with genuine happiness. The panicked calls that followed came immediately, but they no longer mattered. I had everything I needed: a father who loved me unconditionally, a man who valued me for who I was, and the certainty that I had chosen the right path. Dad took my arm, ready to walk me down the makeshift aisle in the garden. "Are you ready, princess?" "More than ever," I replied, my heart overflowing with true love. It was the beginning of a new life, a life built on genuine love and real values. And as I walked toward Diego, I knew I needed nothing more. The community garden had been transformed into something magical. Lights hung between the trees like fallen stars, and the scent of wildflowers filled the air. It wasn't the luxurious event hall my mother would have chosen, but it was perfect in its own way. As Dad guided me down the small improvised path, I saw all the people who truly mattered in my life. Anna, my boss, with tears in her eyes, my university classmates, the neighbors who had become family, Diego's mother and siblings, hardworking, honest people who had embraced me as one of their own. Diego stood waiting under the floral arch he had built himself. His suit wasn't designer, but it was impeccably clean and pressed. His eyes shone with unspoken emotions, filled with pure love as he watched me approach. "You're beautiful," he whispered when Dad placed my hand in his. And in his eyes, I saw that he truly believed it, that to him, I was the most beautiful woman in the world, without needing expensive jewelry or designer dresses. The ceremony was simple but full of meaning. We exchanged vows we had written ourselves, honest promises of love, respect, and hard work together. "Luna," Diego began, his voice trembling with emotion, "I promise to love you more each day, to work tirelessly to build our home, and to always remind you that true wealth lies in the moments we share." My own vows came through happy tears. "Diego, I promise to stand by your side in every moment, to cherish the beauty of our simple but love-filled life, and to always remind you that you are the greatest treasure life has given me." The reception was held in the same garden. Anna had prepared a delicious meal, and the musicians from the plaza filled the air with joyful melodies. There was no expensive champagne or crystal tableware, but there was genuine laughter and true love everywhere. In the middle of the celebration, my phone wouldn't stop vibrating. Mom kept calling, likely panicked over the picture I had sent. Maria also texted me, "Luna, Mom is furious, but I'm so happy for you. The picture is beautiful. There's so much love in it." I decided to turn my phone off. This was my moment, our moment, and I wouldn't let anything ruin it. Dad gave a speech that made everyone cry. When Luna was little, I used to wonder if I could give her the life she deserved. Today, I know I gave her something even more important. I taught her to recognize true love and to value the things that really matter. "Diego, son, take care of her. She is my greatest treasure." Diego's mother also spoke, her words simple but profound. "In our family, we don't have much money, but we have an abundance of love. Luna, thank you for seeing my son's golden heart beyond his work uniform." We danced our first dance as husband and wife under the stars, with the garden lights creating a magical atmosphere. And in Diego's arms, surrounded by love, I knew I had found my home. "Are you happy?" Diego whispered in my ear. "More than I ever imagined possible," I replied, resting my head on his shoulder. As the night went on, our guests began to leave, each taking a small keepsake we had made ourselves. Potted plants that Diego and I had grown together. A symbol that love, like plants, needs constant care to grow. As the last few guests lingered, Anna approached us with a mysterious smile. "I have a surprise for you," she said, handing us an envelope. Inside was a reservation for a small hotel by the coast. "It's my wedding gift to you. It's not much, but..." I hugged her tightly, cutting off her words. She didn't need to explain. It was perfect, just like everything about this wedding. At the end of the night, as we stayed behind to help clean up, because that was who we were, always working together, I found a note hidden among the gifts. It was from Maria. "Dear Luna, I couldn't be there physically, but my heart is with you. Thank you for showing me that true love exists and that it doesn't need mansions or luxury cars to be real. Someday, I hope to find what you and Diego have. With love, Maria." I pressed the note to my chest, feeling a mix of joy and hope. Maybe my little sister had learned the most important lesson, that true happiness has no price. That night, as Diego and I packed for our modest but perfect honeymoon, Dad hugged me one last time. "You chose well, princess," he whispered. "You chose true love." And as we drove off in Diego's old car, decorated with tin cans and ribbons by his brothers, I looked back one last time. I saw the garden, now quiet, but still magical. I saw Dad waving at us, his smile filled with pride and love. I saw everything that truly mattered in my life. My phone, which I had briefly turned on, flashed with more messages from Mom, each one more desperate than the last. But it didn't matter anymore. I had chosen my path. I had chosen true love over appearances, and I had never been happier with my decision. "Are you ready for our new life?" Diego asked, taking my hand as he drove. "With you?" I smiled. "I'm ready for everything." The future didn't promise luxury or excessive comforts, but it promised something far more valuable: true love, honest work, and the freedom to be ourselves. And that, more than any material wealth, was the greatest treasure of all. 6 months later, Diego and I had settled into a small apartment just a few blocks from Dad's. It wasn't fancy, but every corner was filled with love and the memories we were building together. The walls, which Diego had painted himself, displayed photos from our wedding and happy moments with our family. One morning, as I made coffee in our tiny kitchen, I felt a sudden dizziness. It wasn't the first time that week. Diego, who was getting ready for work, looked at me with concern. "Luna, are you okay? This is the third time this week." I smiled, placing a hand on my stomach. "I think we should take a test." The pregnancy test showed 2 clear lines. We held each other in our tiny bathroom, crying tears of happiness as Diego's work uniform soaked up my joyful tears. "We're going to be parents," he whispered, kissing my forehead. "I promise our baby will have all the love in the world." Dad cried when we gave him the news that night. "My princess is going to be a mom," he repeated, hugging us over and over again. "This baby is going to be the most loved child in the world." The news of my pregnancy reached Mom through Maria, who had continued to keep in touch with me in secret. It wasn't long before my phone rang. "Luna." Her voice sounded different, almost vulnerable. "Maria told me, is it true?" "Yes, Mom, I'm going to be a mother." There was a long silence before she spoke again. "Are you okay? Do you have everything you need?" "We have everything that matters, Mom. We have love, we have health, and we have a family that supports us." Another silence. I would like to see my grandchild when they're born." "Our baby will have space for all the love you want to give," I said gently. "But with conditions, Mom. I don't want them to grow up thinking that a person's worth is measured by their bank account." She didn't argue. For the first time, she had nothing to say. The months passed, and our little apartment slowly filled with handmade gifts. Dad carved a wooden crib, painting it himself in the evenings after work. Anna from the restaurant knitted a tiny blanket. Diego spent every spare moment reading books about parenting, determined to be the best father he could be. Maria continued sending me messages, always full of love and longing. "I can't wait to meet my little niece or nephew," she wrote one night. "Mom is still stubborn, but I see her thinking about it more and more. Maybe this baby will be what finally brings her back to you." Maybe? But I wasn't waiting for her anymore. I had found my happiness, my home, and my true family. And soon, I would hold the greatest gift life could give me, the result of a love that was real, honest, and unbreakable. A crib that Diego restored from a secondhand market. A mobile that Dad built using recycled pieces. Blankets lovingly knitted by Diego's mother. Maria started visiting us regularly, sneaking away whenever she could. With each visit, I saw her change, her eyes opening to a different way of life. "It's so cozy here," she said one day, sitting on our worn-out but comfortable couch. "It feels like a real home." One afternoon, as Diego and Dad painted the baby's room, Maria arrived with surprising news. "I enrolled in public university. I want to study social work." I hugged her tightly, proud to see my little sister finding her own path. "Mom is furious," she admitted, "but I don't care anymore. You taught me that life is about more than appearances." The day Martine was born, our tiny apartment overflowed with more love than I ever thought possible. Diego cried as he held our son for the first time, his calloused hands from years of hard work gently caressing the baby's tiny head. To my surprise, Mom showed up at the hospital. She hesitated in the doorway, unsure, until I invited her in. "He's beautiful," she whispered, gazing at Martine. For the first time in years, I saw tears in her eyes. "He looks just like you when you were a baby." "Do you want to hold him?" I offered. As she cradled Martine, I saw something shift in her expression. All the hardness, all the worry about appearances melted away in the presence of an innocent baby who knew nothing of social class or status. "I'm sorry," she said suddenly, her voice breaking. "I'm sorry I didn't understand sooner. I'm sorry I valued the wrong things for so long." It's never too late to change, Mom, I replied, taking her hand. Martin has space in his heart for everyone who loves him for who he is. The years that followed brought more blessings. Diego finished his degree and started his own maintenance business, small but respected for its honest work. I continued working at Anna's restaurant, now as an administrator, applying everything I had learned in university. We lived a simple but fulfilling life. Sundays remained sacred for pizza and movies, now with Martin laughing between us. Dad came over for dinner regularly, teaching his grandson how to fix things just as he had taught me. Maria graduated with honors and began working at a community center, helping families in need. Mom, little by little, learned to value the simple things. Though she never completely abandoned her world of luxury, she learned to see beyond appearances. One night, as I watched my family gathered in our small living room, Diego playing with Martin, Dad telling one of his stories, Maria laughing at his jokes, and even Mom smiling genuinely, I understood the true lesson of my story. Real wealth isn't in what you have, but in who you are and how you love. It's not found in the places you visit or the clothes you wear, but in the laughter you share and the moments you treasure. Diego hugged me from behind, his hands still rough from work, but always gentle with me. What are you thinking about? He whispered. About how rich we are, I replied, looking at our family, rich in all the ways that truly matter. And so in our little apartment filled with love and laughter, I knew I had found life's greatest treasure. Not in a mansion or expensive jewels, but in honest love, dignified work, and the happiness of being exactly who we were. Because in the end, the true riches are the ones money can't buy. Unconditional love, genuine laughter, and the freedom to be yourself.